Hello and welcome everyone to this session of looking at budget decks. Today we're going to be looking at the V-EB01 deck. So this is the first extra booster, releasing in about 2 weeks in English, and we don't have English scans yet because of that, so we'll be working with Japanese scans once again. But we're going to go over the budget lists for all three clans in the Destructive Roar. Hopefully you find something that you like. Again, I've tried to apply the whole keep it to around or below 50 bucks approach. So you'll see a few foils here and there, but these aren't the foils that are very expensive. So I think overall most budget players shouldn't have a big problem finding these cards and should normally be quite accessible. So we're going to begin with Tachikaze, which is arguably the most popular clan of the set, and we're going to be taking a look at the budget list, and afterwards I'm going to be telling you what you can pick up next after you're done with the basic builds. So we're not running the VR, we're going to be running these grade 3s, so it is an Axel clan, so make sure you have your markers, but we're running 4 Deathrex and 4 Savage King. Deathrex is alright for a budget build because both on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, he's the main ride you're going to be wanting to do. He lets you retire one of your rearguards and Soul Blast 1 to retire one of your opponent's front row rearguards, and also build up a lot of power when you retire one of your own units with Gauge. So he's pretty good for pushing for big numbers, for controlling your opponent's board a little bit, and that way he's going to be quite alright even if you do sit on him the entire game. You can obviously ride over him to build up a bit more soul. The one thing that the deck slightly struggles with is that little soul issue, but there's no other card in the deck that does use up soul, so I think you should be okay, but just make sure you're careful using up soul with him so that you don't run out in case you do need to use it every single turn. Next we have Savage King. The reason why is he does have the Axel marker even if you do ride into him, but he sadly doesn't have any Vanguard Circle skills. But even on the Rearguard Circle, he does have the plus 5000 power for every gauge that you have on him, and he also lets you move around the gauge on your field when he does attack. So that way, he's good to call in Rearguard Circles, that way you can move around your gauge, build up a lot of power, and then maybe retire him with the Deathrex to get even more power on the Deathrex. So that way, he's a pretty good combo between these two units, but obviously, you want to be dropping down the Savage King to, one copy over time as you pick up your new cards. So, looking at the grade 2s, we have 4 Blytops. He is a double rare, but shouldn't be too expensive whatsoever actually. But he is a very important card because when he's retired, even if it's during your opponent's turn, you can counterblast 1 and take up to 2 of the equip gauges from him into your hand. So that's really nice. That way you can build up more advantage in your hand, and that way despite being an Axel clan, you can still, have a pretty healthy hand and be able to call out new units every turn. So I think he's very important as a 4-of. He'll be staying in your main deck even if you decide to upgrade it regardless. Then we run 4 of the Attempt Mammoth. He's quite nice, he creates some pressure because your opponent has to guard with 2 cards simultaneously when they guard against him, but he does come with a little downside that at the end of the battle that he attacks, you have to either remove one of his equip gauges or you have to retire him, so do be careful how you use him. So that's why we run him as a 3-of. And then we have 4 Savage Raider. He's good to move around your gauges to get some more gauges on the field in general, and that way you can create bigger attacks with your Deathrex, and that way he's going to be quite good, also staying in the main competitive deck once you do upgrade. And you can also move around gauge to things like Blytops to get more cards in your hand and stuff like that, so he's definitely an important card. Next we have our next double rare, which is Sonic Noah. Again, a very important card in the sense that when you boost something, you put a gauge into the boosted units, equip gauge, and then if the boosted attack hits a Vanguard, then you can retire one of your other rearguards to draw 1. So you can even retire Blytops to draw, 1 and then 2 more from Blytops. That way you basically get 3 extra cards in hand. So it is quite good because you build up hand pretty well, and then you're able to sacrifice your own units in order to build up power and retire your opponent's units as well. So I think he is a very good card, and you will be using him in the main deck regardless. Then the rest of the grade 1 lineup, we have 4 Laceratex, also important because he lets you equip gauge onto him, and when he's retired you also Soul Blast 1 to take one of the gauges from him into your hand. So similar to Blytops, but only 1 gauge in this sense, but doesn't cost the Counterblast but the Soul Blast instead, but also a good card. And finally we have Skyptera, which is when you retire him you can Counterblast 1 during your turn to add him back into your hand. That way you're not actually losing units from your hand, and you can convert them back onto the field later on. So I think that's for those grade 1s, and then we run 2 of the grade 1 vanillas. So these are the 9k power, 0 defense vanillas. They're pretty good to first ride into, makes your opponent, have to overcommit in order to hit you at all with their attacks. So I think it's worth running him for now, but if you don't, then there's other options you can have, but this is just a common, so I think it's quite easy to obtain. For the starter, obviously we run the Dragon Egg, that's the only one they have available, and then we run 8 critical triggers, 4 of the Perfect Guard draw triggers. You'll notice that in all the budget lists now we're running the Perfect Guard draw triggers because they ended up being cheap even in English, so I think in that sense they're fine for budget builds too. So 4 of the Art Bird, and then 4 of the Savage Shaman, the heal triggers. So this is what the budget build looks like. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You're basically controlling the opponent's board while being aggressive with Deathrex and calling your aggressive units that can push out damage and power and pressure to the axle circles, and then you're obviously building up advantage with these 3 units mainly, I guess with Skyptera as well, by just obviously, you know, just drawing cards and getting cards into your hand from the equip gauge and stuff like that. So I think this is overall a pretty alright budget build. But going into the cards that you need to pick up, you do want to first and foremost pick up the Mega Rex, because this is another really good advantage card, because when you would attack with him, when you attack the Vanguard, whether on the rearguard or Vanguard circle, you can retire one of your other rearguards to draw 1, that way you convert a unit into a draw, and then obviously if you retire any of these units, you get something into your hand as well, so that way you're not really losing much. And then if it's on the rearguard circle, you can count +1 to get an equip gauge onto him from the top of your deck, and then for each equip gauge he gets +5k, so he not only generates advantage, he also works as a good pusher for numbers, a good, you know, attacker. So I think he's a very important unit. Shouldn't be too expensive, maybe $5 per piece. So if you can pick him up and then take out the Attempt Mammoths and one of your Savage Raiders instead of him, then you do want to try to pick up the VR. Now, with Gigarex, even if you pick up 1 or 2, it's the same with every budget deck. Even if you can get your hands on 1 or 2, it's going to make a massive difference. So you want to take out the Savage Kings in exchange, because you don't really want to be running more than 2 Savage Kings. Even 1 is fine, you can take him out entirely if you don't like him, but when you can pick up at least 1 Gigarex, make sure to put him in the deck immediately, because he's going to help a lot. He helps you build up gauge when he attacks. He has a basic, you know, almost win condition, in the sense that you can remove 5 of the gauge from your field to deal a damage and buff up your units. So overall, very good card, but as is a bit on the pricey side at around, I'm expecting, we don't know the English prices yet, but to be around $20, but so Gigarex is a bit more on the expensive side, so even if you can get 1 or 2, it's really good, but you know, he is an important target, but Megarex I think is the #1 priority target here. And then this is just a promo, so just by going to shop tournaments and supporting your locals, you can get this promotional card just like that. So this is Beam Terra. You want to run like 1 of him or 2 of him in a way, so maybe you can take out these 2 for additional Beam Terras. So that's going to be it for the budget build of Tachikaze. So now we're going to look into the next one, which is going to be Spike Brothers. So moving right along, we do have Spike Brothers, so we're going to be taking a look at the budget build over here. So this is a Force Clan this time, so it is a bit different, so do keep that in mind, that you have your Force markers ready. And then for grade 3s, we're going to have 4 Juggernaut Maximum and 4 Unite Attacker. Now Juggernaut Maximum you mainly want on the rearguard circles most of the time. When you call him or ride him, he gets plus 10k for that turn, and then during the beginning of your main phase, you can slide him into your soul to search your deck for another Juggernaut Maximum and call him to the rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. This way you're thinning your deck and also building up to your win condition, which is Unite Attacker. So this is the main one you want to be riding, and you know, honestly, you want to ride him a few times maybe, but you're mostly waiting until you have 7 soul from using skills and riding and stuff like that. So his skill is once per turn Vanguard Circle, act, Soul Blast 7, and then you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You can call up to 5 of them, and then the remaining ones you put on the bottom of your deck. And then for that turn, 3 of your units in the front row get plus 5k power. So this is a good finisher because it lets you build up, like let's say you're facing Kagero and they blew up your entire field, like you don't have any more units left. This is a really good card because this can recover your entire field. It lets you choose what you want to call, so you don't need to call like triggers and stuff if you don't want to. And it also buffs up your front row quite well with that extra 5k. So I think you mainly want to be riding into the United Attacker while simultaneously calling the Juggernaut Maximum every turn over the game. But he's not the only one you can call because you also have High Speed Braki, who has the same skill where he gets plus 10k when you call him, and he also basically recycles himself at the start of the main phase. And the other one is Wonder Boy, but it's a bit different, so we'll go into that a bit later. But both of these cards help you just cycle through the deck, thin your deck so that it's only triggers, and stuff like that. Then we're running 4 of Black Panther. Really good unit because for a single Soul Blast you can give it plus 5k or plus 15k, but if you give it plus 15k then it goes into the soul at the end of that battle. So I think it is a good card because then your opponent can't attack it and you get more soul, and then you'll be able to use Unite Attacker even faster. So I think in that sense it is a good card. And then we run 3 of the 10k vanillas because these do have 10k intercept, and I think for a clan like this that's not a bad thing either. Then we run 4 of the Gyro Slinger. Definitely a very good card. When you write it or call it, you take a card from your hand and put it into your soul, and then check the top card of your deck to the same grade as your Vanguard. So if you're grade 3, you check 3, if you're grade 1, you check 1, and then you can call one of those units, and then the remaining ones go to the bottom of your deck, and then the called unit gets plus 5k. This is nice because even if you ride him, and let's say you check the top card and it's a Juggernaut Maximum, you can call it even though you're on grade 1 as a Vanguard. So I think that's a really good skill. It stays in the main deck as well for the actual, full build, so I think it's definitely worth to pick them up because these are cheap. And one thing about Spike Brothers, it's a cheap clan in general. It has the cheapest VR of the set as well, so there's really no, it's really budget friendly basically, so even the full build is quite budget friendly. Then we run 4 of the Gary Gannon. When his boosted attack hits a Vanguard, you can put him into the soul to draw 2 cards and then choose 1 card from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck. So this way again you can cycle through your deck really fast, and that makes it even better. And you can call this on turn 1 and pressure your opponent from the get-go, so that makes him super nice. And then 4 of the Wonder Boy. His second skill is the same, where during the beginning of your main phase you put him into your soul and then search your deck for a Wonder Boy and call it, but his first skill is a bit different. When you call him, you choose any card that's not a grade 1 from your drop zone and put it on the bottom of your deck, and then for that turn he gains plus 5k power, so he'll be a 13k booster or attacker, but most importantly he can bring back your triggers, bring back your good grade 2s that you may have lost in battle, bring back your grade 3s, so he is a very good unit. And then we run 4 of the Funky Bazooka. His skill is quite simple. When another unit is placed in the same column as him, he gains plus 5k power for that turn, so he's a 12k booster or attacker, so it's good for building up some power. So I think he's an alright card for now. Some people run him in the main competitive build too, but I think he's alright as a whole. Then we run the Mecha Trainer, which is the only starter that you do have available, so you do need to run him. And then for triggers we run 4 of the heals, 6 of the criticals, so 4 of the Sonic Breaker, and then 2 of the Silence Joker. And then 4 of the Perfect Guard draws, so this is Marilyn, and then 2 of the Link's draw triggers, because you do want to run the other draw trigger just so you can put cards from your hand into the soul, and by putting this draw trigger you're only losing 5k shield, so it's really not that big of a deal, and it helps you build up numbers overall as a whole. So I think this is a pretty alright build for budget, but then for cards that you can replace, only 2 actually, because these really are the only 2 cards that you want. First will be the Spike Bouncer, very important card. You replace essentially the 3 10k vanillas and then 1 of your Funky Bazookas by taking 3 of these and 1 of these out. You want to try to put in 4 of these Spike Bouncers because he is really important. He's not that expensive either, but basically when you call him or ride him you can almost 1 Soul Blast 1 and look at the top cards of your deck to the same number as your grade. So if you're grade 2 you look at 2, if you're grade 3 you look at 3, and then you call 1 and the remaining ones go on the bottom of the deck. So it's the same as Gyro Slinger as we saw before, but then his second skill is at the end of the battle that he attacked, you can almost 1 and put him into your soul, and then you draw 1. So it's really nice for keeping your hand healthy, and overall he's just a very well-rounded unit, but he's a triple rare, so do keep that in mind. And then finally we have the VR, which is General Siegfried. He is a really good card. He is the engine of your deck. He really wants to just pump out a bunch of units, buff up your field, thin your deck so that it's just triggers, and he has amazing on-hit pressure to stand one of your rear guards too, so you definitely want to pick up, again, even if you pick up 1 or 2, you can take out the Unite Attackers, maybe keep 1 Unite Attacker at the end, but it's not even that necessary, and that way you'll be able to have a really strong deck. I think overall Spike Brothers in the finished build are super strong, but even with this budget build, I think you'll be able to compete on a local level for sure. And the final clan we're going to be taking a look at in this set is going to be Megacolony, so this is the budget variant. So for those of you that are more into the whole cool bug robot aesthetic, or just want to play with one of the Foo Fighter decks, this is going to be one of them. So this is a Protect clan, so do make sure you have your Protect markers. And then the main grade 3 is going to be Machining Stag Beetle. So Machining Stag Beetle has a skill that when you ride him or call him, you can choose up to 2 cards from your soul and call them as rest. And then if you rode him, then for that turn he gains the combined power of those two units. So if let's say you call a grade 2 that's 9k and a grade 1 that's 8k, then he would gain plus 17,000 if you rode him. So I think it's quite nice. He does have the protect marker, can build himself up quite well, but most importantly he does give you a lot of nice advantage on the field for no actual cost, because you don't actually, well, you technically lose cards in the soul, but you don't counterblast or anything, so it's quite nice. And you can also both ride him and call him to use the skill, so that's very good. And then secondly, we use the Antlion. Antlion skill is when he attacks, you can Soul Blast a grade 2 and discard 2 cards from your hand, and then for that battle he gains plus 10,000 power and plus 1 critical, and then your opponent cannot guard with Sentinels for that battle. So very good card because he builds himself up. You do have to discard 2, which is a little bit of a hefty cost, but if your opponent's at 4 damage, it's going to be very threatening. Even if you ride him, you can use the skill. So I think either of these, if you ride them, is going to be good, because with this, if you ride it, you have drive check pressure on top of the skill, while with this, if you ride it, you get the extra power from riding him. So I think overall both units are very nice. Then we run 4 of the Bloody Hercules, which is good for building up power on himself and also having some on-hit pressure to countercharge and also build up power on your other units. And then we also run the Nasty Smog, which does let you block the intercepts of your opponent's units and also blocks some of the, well, it's called stunning. So when your opponent's rested unit isn't allowed to stand, it's called that it's stunned. So he basically doesn't let your opponent's back row stand during the stand phase, so that's really nice in that it blocks your opponent's boosts basically. Then we do run 3 of the Water Gang, a good unit, but I don't think he's worth running at 4. When he stands, you can counterblast 1 and put him into the soul to draw 2, so even if you stand him during the stand and draw phase, you do get the extra draw, which is very nice. Then we run 4 of the Machining Hornet, so this is a double rare. In terms of foils, there's 4 triples and then 4 doubles here, 4 doubles here, and that's actually it for the foils apart from the draw triggers. So this should be overall pretty cheap to build, but Hornet's skill is some pressure, where if his boosted attack hits a Vanguard, then you can check the top 6 of your deck, and then if you have a grade 3 from among them, you add it to your hand, which is good because you want to call this or this all the time. Well, not all the time, this only towards the late game, but this you want to really call. But even if you're grade stuck and you can get the skill off, then even if you ride him first, you can actually on hit, if you hit as the Vanguard, you can actually check the top 6 and add the grade 3 to your hand for no cost, which is really nice. So riding into him isn't a bad option either. Then we run 4 of the Butterfly Officer. She's good for giving your unit some power and also some counter charge, so I think she's definitely worth running 4 of. She'll stay as a 4 of even in the main competitive build. And then we run 3 of each of the Spriteful Hopper and the Phantom Black. Spriteful Hopper gives you a bit more power and also some extra counter charge, and then Phantom Black, he especially adds more pressure with the Antlion, because when he boosts, you can discard a card from your hand, and for that battle he gains plus 6,000 power, and your opponent can't guard with normal units, so that way they only have to guard with the grade 0s, so they're triggers that aren't draw triggers. So I think this is a pretty good card, and it combines pretty well with basically anything, so I think that's the strong part of it. Then for the starter, we play the Machining Worker Ant, so this is my starter of choice. And then 8 critical triggers, 4 heal triggers, and then 4 of the Draw Perfiguards. So I think once again, the Draw Perfiguards shouldn't be expensive, so definitely worth picking up. So this is the budget build, but if you're looking to improve it, then these are my suggestions. So you do want to pick up the Machining Mantis first off, because when you call it or ride it, you can must 1 to check the top 6 cards of your deck and add a grade 3 from among them to your hand, and then for that turn he gains plus 6,000 power too, so he's a 15k attacker, which is definitely quite nice in building up your numbers, and it's going to be a threat overall throughout the game. So I think he's a good card. I would suggest taking out the Nasty Smog and putting in 4 of the Machining Mantis, but some people take out some of the Water Gangs, or they move around numbers, but basically just take out 4 of these grade 2s to be able to play the Machining Mantis. And then finally you have the VR, which is the Machining Spark Hercules. So he's basically the strongest card in the deck because he minuses the power of your opponent's units and forces them to, stay that way until your opponent's turn is over, and also builds up power on himself and on your units. So he's kind of a jack of all trades, definitely the card you want to be riding the most. So again, even if you pick up 1 or 2, definitely put him in. I would say take out 2 of the Antlions at first, and then you can essentially take out 1 of each of these to have more slots for the grade 3s, because Protect clans overall like to run 10 grade 3s most of the time, so I think that's quite optimal. So that is it actually for the Megacolony budget build and all the budget builds for this set in general. So do let me know what you guys think of all of these budget builds. What would you suggest yourself? If you have some other budget builds, then do suggest them as well. I try to keep it, as I said, to around 50 or less bucks. That way anybody that, you know, has enough money to, for a video game for example, is able to buy a deck. And I think honestly it's definitely worth it, because through Vanguard you can meet a lot of amazing people. Even if you're playing a budget deck, there's definitely no problem with it, and you can also win on the local level, you know, to your own surprise, I think. So that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you once again for staying tuned for this budget video. I'm sorry that it came out a little bit late considering the Japanese release date, but you know, now we're gonna be moving on to V-EB02, so I'm really excited to show you all the content for that set, because I've been really excited for it for a long time. So that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click the bell button, as well as check out the social medias in the description, and join the Discord channel if you haven't already. But on that note, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.